Hello, everyone. My name is Julie McVey, and this is Unordinary Made Ordinary, where we talk about extraordinary experiences of everyday people. After today's interview, if you would like to continue the conversation of all things metaphysical, paranormal, and supernatural, feel free to join our private UMO group by clicking on the link in the video description. And today, our guest is Brooke Jones. Welcome, Brooke. I don't mean to disturb you.
Oh, I like reading this. It's such a good book. Hey, Julie, how you doing?
I'm doing great. I'm doing great. I'm so glad you could spend a little time with me and share your story with all of us. Very excited for our conversation.
Well, thank you. And I'm very happy to be here.
So if you wouldn't mind, if you could start us off by just sharing a little bit about yourself.
Oh, me, oh, my. It started in a 50,000 watt radio station in Fresno. Sorry. That's an old joke. I am 125,000 years old. Well, no, it just feels like it. I've been in radio in Los Angeles and San Francisco for a whole lot of years. And then cancer came into my life. So I retired from that. And I currently live in Oregon. And I have animals and people. And then I decided that the story of my near-death experience had to be told. So I wrote it. And it was published not long ago. And it actually hit the top of the Amazon bestseller list a few months ago. Wow. That was kind of cool. But it's the word for word account of my near-death question and answer session with God. And a lot of people, including the folks at IONS, have said it's the strangest near-death experience ever been reported, in part because it's funny. And I can go into details about all of that during the course of our conversation, but I am now dedicating my life to telling the world about the existence of this book, Why Are There Monkeys, and Other Questions for God, because I'm hearing from readers all around the world that this book is changing lives. It's making people who, here's an example of, hundreds of emails I've gotten from people who have said, I was raised to believe that my religion and my God are the only real religions and the only real God. And anybody who believes differently is a blasphemer who should burn in hell and deserves scorn. But after I read your book, Why Are the Monkeys, I now find it impossible to deny my kinship with people of other religions. Mm-hmm. Can you imagine what this world could be like if enough people read this book and had that kind of reaction? I can. Which is why I've decided to dedicate whatever time remains to me in this life to telling the world about the existence of Why Are There Monkeys and Other Questions for God, the story of my near-death experience. Bizarre as it is, but that's what I'm doing, and that's why I'm here with you.
Lovely. Would you mind, Brooke? I'm just curious a little bit about your upbringing. I like to ask my guests if they've had any religious or spiritual upbringing during childhood.
Well, I was born into a family of Reform Jews. There are Reform Jews, conservative Jews, and Orthodox Jews. Reform Jews are the people who, as I have said many times, cling to a tribal identity while knowing absolutely nothing about their tribal history. So in my family, although technically and by birth everybody was Jewish, there was no Jewish practice of any sort except going to temple once a year to basically show off the adults' mink coats. So I didn't really have any religion. And at some point in my early life, it occurred to me that there probably is no such thing as God, because if there was, I'd been praying for a pony every day from the time I was 5, and I didn't get a pony. So I figured I'm a good girl. If there were a God, I would have given me a pony, but there's no pony, so there's no God. So, okay, no real religion at all in my upbringing. But I don't even know how to explain this without sounding even weirder than I am. From the time I was very, very young, I was having dreams that came true. I was dreaming of things that hadn't happened yet, and then they happened. And of course, my parents, being intellectuals, thought I was just out of my mind, and they said either a nut house or shut up. So I chose shut up. But I, along with that, having dreams that came true, I also had, I don't know, maybe there are angels that have lived on my shoulders since the day I was born, because I have had at least 7 profound and verifiable situations in my life that should have killed me. There is no earthly explanation for why I survived. I mean, none. And yet I survived. So I attribute that to the fact that in those situations, in the seconds before I would have otherwise been very dead, I heard a voice in my head that screamed at me, either get up or get out or move or something. And I did in each of those cases. And a second later, something absolutely horrifying happened in the place where I had just been standing or sitting, more times than I can count. So there is something otherworldly about me and this body that I currently inhabit in this life. I don't claim to understand it, but it's been proven to me so many times that I finally accept the fact that it's a part of my life and it's real.
Do you hear these, I call them maybe clairvoyant messages, other times other than when you're in danger?
No.
No. Okay. Yeah, I remember you did share about the 94 earthquake. I remember hearing that. I was here too. So yeah, that was you could share a little bit about that to give an example of what you're talking about. That's amazing.
And it is, and it's not even the most amazing of the stories. On my website, written by BrookeJones.com, you get access to my blog, whatif.blog, and my cartoons and my memes and my card store and everything else. But on my blog, I wrote an article some time ago called Death Be Not, after the AG play Death Be Not Proud. And it tells 3 different situations in which there's no explaining why I wasn't killed. And one of them involved the 1994 Northridge earthquake. I was living in LA at the time. And I tend to be nocturnal. As a rule, I'm up all night writing, and a lot of writers do this. And I tend to go to sleep when the sun comes up. So I was sitting at my desk in my home office, which was a desk that I made that should have actually been the dining room table, but I turned it into a desk, and there was a very large window directly in front of the desk, and then 6 foot long, half a dozen 6 foot long 2x4s on the left and the right side of the desk going floor to ceiling that were my bookshelves. And on those shelves, there were books, including my collection of unabridged dictionaries, and those are big, heavyweight things, and my computer tower. And anybody who doesn't know what a computer tower is, okay, I won't tell you. And a boombox and a whole bunch of other stuff, terracotta pots and plants and everything. And I was writing a script for a TV series, and I had just finished. It was 4:30 in the morning on January 17th, 1994. And I typed fade out, the end, which is what you type at the end of a script. And in that very instant, 4:30 in the morning, a voice, the lights went out suddenly, the electricity just went away. And it was really dark. So the computer shut down, there were no lights, I couldn't see anything. And immediately I heard a voice in my head scream, "Get up." I did. I dove out of my high back leather chair, and immediately a 7.1 earthquake rocked Los Angeles. And things started flying around the room. The walls were shaking. Everything was breaking. Mirrors were crashing. My daughter was screaming. She was 12 at the time, and she was down the hall in her bedroom, and I couldn't get to her. And I didn't know why, because something was blocking my way physically. There was something in front of me that wasn't there before. but I couldn't get to her, and dishes are smacking me in the back of my head as they're flying out of my cupboards. And it sounded like there was a train running through my house. And all of a sudden, a neighbor was able to break into my house. He comes running up the stairs, got a flashlight in his hands, grabs my daughter, throws her over his shoulder, and walks out. And I follow close behind, and I go and sit down on my front lawn where most of the neighborhood is now gathered. And by this time, the shaking has stopped. Mm-hmm. And the air smells like rotten eggs. And you, Julie, you know about this. The gas company makes natural gas smell like rotten eggs rather than like chocolate chip cookies, so that you know that something's not right. Yeah. And all of a sudden, some bozo is walking down the street with a cigarette dangling out of his mouth. He pulls a Zippo lighter out of his pocket, flips it open, and just as he's about to strike it, he gets tackled from 2 different directions. And people knock him to the ground, and the lighter goes flying, and people are screaming, "That's gas, you idiot, you could have blown us all up."
Oh my goodness.
So 2 hours later, the sun starts to come up. Now it's like 6:30 or so. I grab my neighbor's flashlight and I go into my house. I go upstairs, I turn the corner into my home office, and I stop dead in my tracks. And what I see makes me physically ill. Mm-hmm. In my high back leather chair where I had been sitting, there now sat a 6-foot-long 2x4 at a 45-degree angle. If I had not gotten out of that chair exactly when I did, that was the crash that I heard when I got out of the chair. It was the 2x4s collapsing and landing in that chair. I would have been decapitated.
Wow, man.
Literally a heartbeat after I moved.
Did you recognize the voice? Did it?
Yes.
Because you had heard it before. So you were like, oh, okay. You didn't even question it.
Didn't.
Like, I'm out of here.
Question it. Yep. Didn't question it.
Wow. So, so when you had your near-death experience was, if you wouldn't mind sharing the year that took place. And I'm curious, had you had any of these experiences before your near-death experience with the voice saying, "Get out of the way, get up, move"?
I think I had experiences in which my life was saved by something other than me, and I can't explain why or how, but I'm thinking, I don't think any of the earlier experiences had to do with me hearing a voice.
Okay.
That's interesting. I hadn't really even thought of that before. Earlier experiences had to do with me just being motivated to move without hearing anything, or somebody showing up who wasn't there before, or just weird things that I can't explain.
Okay.
But the near-death experience happened when I was 25. And although I'd had lots of weird experiences in my life, including dreams that came true and things that should have killed me but didn't, I don't think I started hearing that inner voice until after that near-death experience, which is interesting. I hadn't thought about it before. But also after that near-death experience, other things started revealing themselves to me that didn't exist before, including a sort of very intense empathic ability that includes my ability to actually feel things that other people are feeling.
Okay.
And that was new. That happened after the near-death experience.
Okay. I was just, it was just curious to me because, and you will share this in just a moment about the voice. And I was just wondering if the voice it's saying, "Get up, move," is your angel, or if it was the voice back from the NDE, or I don't know, just an inner knowing.
It definitely wasn't, it definitely wasn't the voice, quote unquote, that I heard during my NDE, most definitely not, because that was actually the voice of God. And the voice that I hear sounds like my voice, but amplified, very loud, because it screams. It screams. So that, because I'm, sort of not taken to subtlety. So, I need to be hit in the head just to get my attention. So yeah, not otherworldly voice. I think it's actually my voice being prompted by something I can't explain.
Okay. Well, if you wouldn't mind, please walk us through your NDE, maybe leading up to it, what led up to that, and then take us through a little bit of your near-death experience, if you would, Brooke.
Well, all right. As I said, I was 25. It was 1975. Do the math. Yes, I am 173 years old. I was having a little party, just two other people, and I'm a child of the 60s. And as a child of the 60s and being 25, I was certifiably stupid, as are, most 25-year-olds. And we were doing drugs that nobody in their right mind would ever do. And I overdosed. And I had, being a child of the 60s, I'd seen overdoses. I know what they looked like. I knew what the symptoms were, and I knew I was having one. Mm-hmm. And in that moment, it's as if everything slowed down. I knew I was leaving. I prayed to gods I didn't believe in. I pictured every Hollywood actor who'd ever portrayed the role of Jesus. I chanted to a framed picture of Swami Satchidananda on my dresser, who I studied with years before. And then I died. And this, again, 1975, I had never heard the term near-death experience. Right. I think Dr. Moody's book had been published not long before that, but I hadn't read it and I hadn't heard of it. So when I found myself in this tunnel that was literally made of light, and it's not like I was walking through the tunnel, it felt like I was being carried by the tunnel. And it was this warm, gentle, loving light. And it seemed alive. It felt like it was breathing. And then I wasn't moving anymore. And I was standing up, but I couldn't see what I was standing on. And I couldn't see anything anywhere around me. And it's not because it was a void or it was black or I was blind. It was because there wasn't anything there. It was just me. No people, no furniture, nothing, just me. And I was confused, to say the least. So I called out, hello, anybody home? Hello. And finally I heard the voice. And it was the deepest, most resonant voice I had ever heard. And I have to qualify heard because it's not really something that I heard with my ears. It was as if I was a tuning fork. My whole body was a tuning fork, and I vibrated with every sound. Like every cell in my body vibrated with every sound that this voice made. And I suddenly realized where I was, and I actually said out loud, "Oh my God." And that's when the voice said, "By Jove, I think she's got it." Boom. And that began my question and answer session with God. And that was my near-death experience, in which I was allowed to ask any question I could think of, and I was given the answers. And I discovered, first of all, that God has a sense of humor. Well, of course, God has a sense of humor. Have you ever seen a platypus? I have had people write to me after reading my book saying, well, obviously your story is fiction because everybody knows God is not funny. To which I say, really? Do you believe that God is all powerful and can do anything? And they say, yes, of course. I said, well, then why can't God be funny? Oh, I don't know. I believe that God presented himself, and I'll get to that pronoun issue in a second, in a way that I could relate to, because there was no point in God trying to scare me. Why? if God is our quote unquote heavenly father, creator, whatever, and he loves us, why would he want to terrify me? It took me a while to figure that one out. Why wasn't I rolled up in a ball in a fetal position, shivering with fear? And then it occurred to me, well, if Robin Williams or Mr. Rogers could portray a kind, gentle, fatherly figure, certainly God could.
Right.
And because I spent a lot of my life making people laugh, God presented himself to me in a way that I felt comfortable.
Yeah.
And that makes absolute sense to me. And when I asked, are you male or female? God said, why does everybody ask me that? Really? You're asking me? Why would you ask me? And he said, I am neither. And then all of a sudden, I heard a voice that was the softest, most gentle, most obviously feminine voice I've ever heard in my life say, and then again, we're both. So those of you who want to know if God is a man or God is a woman, the fact is God exists in spirit. You know that from Sunday school. And please ignore my ringing telephone. I will. There is no, hanging down parts on God. He's not a white guy with a long beard and long hair sitting on a cloud. That's not how it works. God exists in spirit. And that is not as weird as it sounds, because absolutely everything that exists, you, me, this computer, the table, the dog, everything is made of atoms. Atoms move. They're never still. That's what energy is. And it vibrates at its own frequency. Everything vibrates at a different frequency. So if we are made of energy, which in fact we are, our DNA is all made of energy. It's all made of atoms and molecules and protons and neutrons and electrons. God is, they say we are made in God's image. Well, God is energy, spirit. And so are we. And this meat puppet we're walking around in is temporary. And it isn't who we are. It's just our vehicle for this current life. And that makes absolute sense, not only in terms of karmic understanding, but in the laws of physics. That's not airy-fairy stuff. This is Isaac Newton's basic laws of physics. Everything is energy. Everything vibrates. Everything has a frequency, including God.
Very interesting.
Mm-hmm.
So how long were you over there at? So it was basically a Q&A session, your entire
It was absolutely
time.
A Q&A session, yes.
Do you know how long you were there in physical, like this Earth's time?
I was dead for 8 minutes.
Okay.
Legally dead. Absolutely legally dead for 8 minutes. But time is a construct that obviously exists in this realm, on this planet, in our lives. But where I was, there was no such thing as time. It's like either everything happens at once or everything happens however it happens, whenever it happens. But time is, somebody once said, time is the creator's way of keeping things from bumping into each other. But where I was, which was definitely not here and not of this world, there was no time. Things took as long as they took, but in the earthly realm, it was 8 minutes. In the heavenly realm, time is a moot point.
Did you feel like, when you came back, did you feel like you had been there a long time?
Yes, actually, I did.
Yeah.
Yeah, it felt like, yeah, it did. Come to think of it.
So when you're standing before this voice, because you didn't see anything,
correct,
or any objects, just yourself, did you perhaps, you did feel solid, and did you look at your hands to see if it was still Brooke? Or
I had a body, because at one point I sat down, and then I stood up. So I had a physical awareness whether it was just an awareness that was given to me or it was a physical body of another realm. I don't know.
Wow. Okay. And you said you heard the voice, but it was more like a vibration
Yes.
within you,
Yes.
around you, both.
All of it. It was as if every cell in my body vibrated to the frequency of this voice.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, I don't know that I've ever heard of an NDE where it's really all Q&A, a few questions here and there, and did this voice say, I am God? It was, oh, there's your kitty you said might show up.
Oh,
when you
hello.
said, oh, but
That's
when you said, oh my God, and he says, oh, she's got it. That was your understanding, like, oh, this is God.
No, there was more. I actually asked, what do I call you? I mean, there's Allah, there's Jesus, there's Yahweh, there's Father, there's whatever. What should I call you? And the response I got was, it doesn't make any difference what you call me. I've been known by all of those names, but your names for me do not define me. So you can call me Sally if you want to. It doesn't matter. Call me anything you want. It has nothing to do with me.
Wow. And what did you sense, like, I'm not going to be staying here from the beginning, or did you not even know if you would be moving
There
forward?
was no awareness of a future at all. I didn't think about what happens next. I was just talking about in the moment. That's exactly where I was for that complete period of time. I was right in the now then, until the very end, when I was informed that I could ask one more question. At that moment, I realized that something was going to change, because my question and answer session was about to be over. I had no idea what was coming next. I didn't know if it meant that I was going to go back to the land of the living or go somewhere else. I had no idea. All I knew was I'm being allowed to ask one more question. So I'd already asked pretty much everything that my 25-year-old brain could ask, which obviously isn't a whole lot of things that I would have asked if I were older and more experienced. But now there's just one more question. What should I ask? What would that last question be? I get one more. I had the feeling it should be something really important, not like who killed John Kennedy.
Yeah.
Or, how do dolphins keep from drowning when they sleep, or, stuff that I'm always curious about. But I thought, this is supposed to be some real profound thing. And then it hit me. All of a sudden, I knew what that last question was going to be. And it was a question I'd never even thought of before. It was a question that had never in my life crossed my mind. And I asked it. And then I was back. Okay. And no, I'm not going to tell you what that last question is, because yes, it's in the book, but if I just tell you what that last question is, it wouldn't really, it would be missing something in translation. So, it's definitely in the book, but you're going to have to read it in the book. And I'm going to admit that when I watch authors being interviewed, or, I spent years interviewing people for a living, some authors said, well, you're going to have to read my book. It used to irritate me, because I think, well, if that's your answer, why are you giving an interview? But unfortunately, in this particular case, I actually have to say that. You're going to have to read the book, but it takes less than 2 hours to read this itty bitty book. So, and it'll make you laugh. So, and the money goes to the Breast Cancer Research Foundation, most of it. So, I don't feel bad saying, please read the book, and then you'll get the final question that I asked and a whole bunch more.
How many questions did you ask total?
I don't know. I don't remember. I didn't count them.
Do you have all of them in the book?
Yes.
Oh, okay.
They are in the book.
But so did you end up religious after this event?
Well, good question. When I came back, I had to spend some time figuring out whether or not what I experienced had really happened, first of all. Mm-hmm. Not having heard near-death experience or knowing anybody who had had this experience, I had to really deal with, did I make this up?
Right.
And then I was given undeniable proof that it happened. Once I got that, then I realized that I had to figure out a way to live my life in harmony with the experience I had had. And that took quite a bit of time. I didn't even know where to begin, having no relationship with God, no concept of God before this experience. So I did everything I could think of to help me find a way to live in harmony with my experience. I started hanging out with a bunch of San Francisco radio people. I was in San Francisco at the time this happened. And they do a Wednesday, Bible study, spiritual get together. So I started attending that and hanging out with them. And that I asked questions. That was helpful. Mm-hmm. And then it wasn't. I was walking through the living room in my house, the television was on, and as I walked through on my way to the kitchen, I heard Pat Robertson say, if you want to go to heaven, I'm paraphrasing, if you want to go to heaven, you first of all have to send me your money and blah, blah, blah. And I stopped in my tracks and I went, okay, never mind. So I turned off the television, and that was the end of me having anything to do with any organized religion at all. So I was left with, okay, I guess this is something that I need to do just directly with me and my creator, me and the presence that I met when I was dead. And that's what I've been doing ever since. And I try and check in on a regular basis to make sure that, okay, am I doing this right? And okay, should I be doing something else? And it works. I have established a relationship with the being that I met during my near-death experience. It's a relationship that I'm totally comfortable with, that makes complete sense to me. And I wish everybody could know what I know, because everybody would act differently and realize that hatred ain't the thing. And seeing a difference between your meat puppet and somebody else's meat puppet is ridiculous. It's just, dogs of different breeds still, smell each other's butts and have a lovely time together. Why can't humans do that? It's sad. Not the smelling the butts.
Yeah.
During my near-death experience, one of the many questions I asked had to do with the way we treat each other here on Earth. And I said, there is so much hatred on Earth, and people, killing each other and hating each other. And it's one of the reasons why people have such a hard time believing that you exist. Right. And the voice said to me, wait, people have a hard time believing I exist because there's so much hatred in the world. I said, yeah. So, well, do they have a hard time believing that the devil exists because there's so much good in the world? Hello. I loved that. Yes, human beings have the ability to be horrible to each other. We have a history since the dawn of time of being horrible to each other. There's nothing to do with God. Spanish Inquisition, the Crusades, they were killing people left and right, supposedly in the name of God. Well, I got news for you, not in the name of God. And as we were talking about that, I actually felt God cry. Talking about how his children, us, we hate and torture and make each other miserable. And I swear to you, I felt God cry. And it was the same feeling, not in my ears, but vibrations.
Right.
And the feeling of God crying, it felt like the air that I was breathing was made of shattered, jagged pieces of agony. That's what it felt like. And I never want to feel that again. But when we hate one another, that's God's reaction. You don't want to do that, people. Really, you don't.
Yeah.
Of course, on the other hand, I also felt God laugh. And that was so cool. Oh my God. It felt like every cell in my body was laughing. Like my spleen, my intestines, my big toes.
Wow.
Every part of me was smiling and laughing when God laughed. It was fabulous.
How do you keep connection with God? Do you pray or meditate or?
Yes and yes.
You do.
Both.
And do you you don't hear him anymore in the way you did, but do you have an intuition of the direction, his guidance?
Yes. Yes. I know wrong and I know right. And I can feel the difference. Absolutely. When I'm doing something I shouldn't be doing, I absolutely know it. When I'm doing something good, I know that too. When I'm causing somebody pain, I know that also.
I'm guessing your feelings about death have changed since then.
I never really thought about it before, but now I have absolutely no fear of death. I don't want anything to do with pain, suffering, or paralysis, but death, no, I have no fear of it at all, because I've been there, done that. And there's no reason to be afraid of what awaits us on the other side, because what waits for us on the other side is nothing but love.
I'm curious, when you came out of this, you're 25, you're all partying, you're a kid, did you say, hey, bye, I got to meet God? I mean, what, did you share it with your friends?
No.
Not at all.
Because I had not ever heard of this experience, because I had never heard the term near-death experience or the light or the tunnel or anybody going and coming back. I was, memories of my childhood when I was telling my parents that I had a dream that something was going to happen, and then it did. And they said, well, rubber room or shut up? And I chose shut up. I sort of had that feeling at that moment, like this is not something I should share, because people are going to think I'm even crazier than they already think I am. So no, I did not share this for a very long time.
You didn't did you think maybe it was drug induced? Had you ever, you don't have to share if you ever tried hallucinogenics, but were you aware of hallucinogenics and the effect that those could
aware
have?
Of and done, yes, both. Child of the 60s, I never liked it, so it wasn't something I did often, a couple of times, and not pleasant, but no, there was nothing drug feeling about my experience at all.
Did not seem
crystal
like
clear. It had nothing to, it didn't feel like a drug experience at all.
So other than having this connection or keeping this connection with the voice, what other kinds of spiritual practices are you involved in? Any at all?
Well, I would consider myself a practicing Buddhist. And if I keep practicing, maybe someday I'll get good at it. But I consider myself a very spiritual person, but not at all a religious person.
Okay.
And that's another question that I asked while I was there, and I should probably share that with you and your audience now.
Share any that you feel comfortable sharing. I just didn't want to ask you to share something that you didn't feel comfortable with sharing.
Well, I would tell you, I promise.
Okay.
One of the many questions I asked, and by the way, every question is in the book, one at a time, along with the answers that I received. And one of the questions that I asked was, what religion is God? I mean, there are Christians, and there are Jews, and there are Muslims, and there are Hindus, and there are Druids, or maybe not anymore. But, what religion is God?
Right.
And
Right.
the answer I got was, I am no religion. And then the explanation that followed was, religion is a man-made concept invented by man to control other men. And it has nothing to do with me. That's God was talking. And those are the exact words that I was told. And I absolutely resonate with that. That makes absolute sense to me.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah.
So I'm curious. So Buddhist, does this mean you believe in reincarnation?
That's another question I asked. And I said, is it possible that we go and then go back in another form, in another body? I mean, Shirley MacLaine says that, you know, she's done this.
Yeah.
So is reincarnation possible? And the answer I got was, when it's needed, yes. It has been known to happen. And I said, well, is Shirley MacLaine one of those who has done it? And the answer I got was, you're not Shirley MacLaine. You don't need to know that.
Man.
None of your business, basically. Which is, you know, probably the exact right answer. You know, that's what I should have been told, because no, it wasn't any of my business. But I, not long ago, I actually sent a copy of my book to Shirley MacLaine. Hoping maybe, you know, she'll read it and drop me a line. I don't know. I'm not expecting it, but wouldn't that be fun? Because I actually did ask God specifically about her.
So yeah, that's very interesting. And I'm wondering now, did you discover, or do you have any beliefs on the free will? Because you said if it's needed, he says if it's needed. Does that mean we don't have free will as far as if we want to come back?
Doesn't mean that at all. Free will is a whole separate subject, and it's a subject we definitely did discuss. And it's a gift that was given to us. We have the choice to do whatever we choose to do. However, this is a causal universe in which we live. Every cause has an effect. Every action has a reaction. That's not airy-fairy stuff. That's Isaac Newton laws of physics.
Right.
We were given free will. And so we choose, we make choices to do what we do. And God has the option of responding however God chooses to respond to the choices that we make. And we have to own our choices, because we're also going to own the results of our choices, the repercussions of our choices. But no, God gave us free will for a reason. He didn't want puppets.
Well, back to reincarnation. Do you have any understandings or beliefs about reincarnating into an ET?
No, I don't know anything about it. We did talk about extraterrestrials, though. That was an interesting conversation too. But no, as far as reincarnation is concerned, I was told that it's a real thing, that it does exist, that there are times when people are reincarnated. I don't know into what. I don't know if it's all the time. I don't know if it's everybody. I was given an answer that was, you know, okay, that's the answer, and the rest you will know when it is time for you to know, which is something he, she, they, them said to me. And I said, well, wait a minute, I was alive that time, and now I'm dead this time. Is there some other time that I don't know about? To which the response was, there are lots of times you don't know about. Oh, okay. Has anybody ever told you you bear a striking resemblance to Celia Ward? The actress Celia Ward? Yes, I just noticed that. It was like startling. Okay, anyway. Okay, next.
Because I want to use the next few minutes, if it's okay, before we run out of time, just to get your take on a few things. Like,
Okay.
do you have any opinion or understanding, belief about the purpose of all creation? I know that's a
Yeah,
big one.
it is a big one, but it's one of the ones I discuss. What's the meaning of life? Why are we here? And I can give you a generalized answer,
Okay.
but the whole conversation is in the book and I can't recreate the entire conversation.
Yeah.
But the basic reason for life is for us to figure out what we're supposed to be doing. It sounds kind of circular, but we are here because we are meant to figure out what we're supposed to be doing with our here-ness.
Mm-hmm.
You were given a life, you were given a body. What are you going to do with it? What choices are you going to make? And it's all about choice. Everything is about choice. God's really big on choice. We will be judged by our choices, but we are here to make them. The good ones, the bad ones, whatever, hopefully more good than bad. But as we get older, we learn a bit more. Maybe our choices are made more intelligently. They're made more with the understanding of what's good for others rather than what's good for me. But if there is a one singular, what is the purpose of life? Which I did ask. Mm-hmm. The purpose of life is to figure out why you're here. I can't tell you why you're here. Only you can.
It sounds like we're curious beings. And yes. One of the purposes, or maybe the major purpose, is to live out that curiosity.
That makes sense to me.
But I was also interested in not just the creation of this planet and humans, but all of creation. Did you happen to ask anything about that?
At the age of 25, I probably didn't have a big enough scope of understanding or even scope of curiosity to ask something that grand, that large, that cosmic. So no, although we did discuss the existence of life elsewhere.
Yeah.
And there's no way I can recreate that conversation for you, but it's funny. And I wrote it all down word for word, but it's this long, really hilarious conversation that had to do with the Garden of Eden. And as you might guess from the title of the book, Why Are There Monkeys? Conversation of evolution versus creation. And, were we all the product of Adam and Eve, or were we fish that walked out of the ocean, or is it one or the other? And the answer to that should actually be obvious to everybody. Consider your own life. 9 months before you were born, daddy's sperm, mommy's egg got together, boom, atoms and molecules and cells grew and split and divided, and then we were a fetus, and then we were a baby, and then we were born, and then we were an infant and a toddler and a teenager and a 20-something and an old fart. In our own lives, we can see both evolution and creation. Mm-hmm. So no, they are not mutually exclusive. The human race both evolved and was created. Everything that exists here was created, but everything that was created evolves. If it doesn't, it dies. Evolution is growth and change.
What about before you entered mommy and daddy as a energy, soul, spirit, whatever label you want to give it? What were we before?
I don't know. One of the questions I did not know enough to have asked. Again, 25,
you
not a rocket scientist.
You did pretty good at 25, I think, considering.
Well, thank you. but I did the best I could, but that one didn't even occur to me. But the ones that did occur to me are pretty fundamental. Some are probably goofy, but
yeah, a lot of humor. There's a lot of humor in it.
Well, but that's just me,
right.
That's how I relate. And
anything that you can share with us about what you may have learned either then or through intuitions about the other side? What is life like on the other side? Because you really didn't quite make it to the other side. You're sort of in that waiting area, I guess you would say.
Yeah, I described it as being at heaven's front door, although I didn't see a door, but it's the least of my problems. All I know for certain as a result of one of the things I know for certain as a result of my experience is that what awaits us on the other side is nothing to be feared. And that's a big one for me.
Of course, yeah.
And I'm hearing from people who are living with terminal illness, and they've read my book. In some cases, caregivers have read to them, and they've then written to me to say that they wake up each morning hopeless and sad and frightened, and they know they're not going to get better, and yet they're terrified of what happens when they take their last breath. Right. But after reading this book, they're no longer afraid of death. And that's so many people have written to me about that. And that makes me feel really good.
Oh, I bet. That's wonderful.
Because that's the reality. There is nothing to fear. What awaits us on the other side is nothing you should fear. It's safe, it's warm, and it's loving.
I'm loving this conversation, but we are running out of time. And before we do, I want to make sure you can share how the listeners can contact you. And are you working on any current projects?
Okay, first of all, the project I am working on at the moment is telling the world about the existence of why are there monkeys and other questions for God for two reasons. One, because most of the money goes to the Breast Cancer Research Foundation, because I'm a breast cancer warrior. I was diagnosed with breast cancer some years ago, and it was a late diagnosis. So, again, lucky girl, I'm still here. And also because I know from the responses that I've gotten from readers that this book really could change the world, because it is changing lives. So what I'm doing right now is dedicating all of my waking hours to telling people about the existence of why are there monkeys and other questions for God, because the more people buy it, the more money I can donate to the Breast Cancer Research Foundation, but also the more people are going to recognize that what awaits us on the other side is something we embrace, not something we have any reason to fear. And that there are lessons to be learned right here, right now, that can make the lives of everybody on this planet better, kinder, gentler, more compassionate. And there's nothing hard about learning those lessons. It's just about opening yourself to the possibility that you don't currently have all the answers. So that's what I spend my time doing.
That's great.
And as far as reaching me, I have a website written by BrookeJones.com, and Brooke has an E on the end of it. And on that website, there is a contact form that you can send me an email, whatever, and I actually read the emails that I get. And it also has links to my blog, What If, to my card store, the Card Outlet, which is an online card store that I create really goofy greeting cards. And that money also goes to the Breast Cancer Research Foundation. And nice. My YouTube channel, where there are, I have talking monkeys on my YouTube channel. I know that sounds weird, but check it out, you'll see. And interviews and other appearances on podcasts and other places. But if you want to contact me, ask me a question, tell me how my book affected you, that's really simple. Just go to writtenbybrookejones.com juliemcvey.com and scroll down to the contact form and send me an email, and I'll actually write back to you.
Wonderful. So what I like to do at the very end, if it's okay, if you have anything else on your heart or any other, you've already shared so many wonderful things, but if there's anything that you thought, oh, I wanted to share this one last thing, or just any words of encouragement to leave us with. You already have left us with so many words of encouragement, so I appreciate it.
Thank you. And there's so many things that I could, would, maybe should say, but it would only get us into, okay, we're going to talk for another hour now.
True.
Not. I just want everybody to know that whoever you are, you do not have all the answers. And the sooner you recognize that, the happier you're going to be, because you don't have the responsibility of having to have all the answers. And the sooner you'll end up getting more answers. You know, it's like having a closet that's full of clothes and you want new clothes, but there's no room because it's full of old clothes. You got to get rid of the old clothes first. Okay. So just recognize there are questions that you haven't thought to ask, and there are answers that you don't yet know. But that is all there and all available to anybody who decides to open their heart and recognize the truth that they don't have all the answers yet, and be willing to accept that you may not be right. Because there's no guarantee that any of us is right about everything, because we're not. We're human, you know. We can't possibly be right. We can't possibly be perfect, because perfection doesn't exist. And we do not have all the answers. And as a matter of fact, the people who think they have all the answers, those are the people who probably don't even know what the questions are. So I would just ask everybody, first of all, to please read Why Are There Monkeys and Other Questions for God. You will enjoy it. Takes less than 2 hours to read. It's fun and it will touch you. People laugh and they cry, and then they go back and read it again with a yellow highlighter pen. That's what everybody's doing. That's the thing. But I would just ask you understand that we're here in our current form temporarily. And the nicer and kinder and more gentle we are to each other, the better we're actually going to feel. I know that seems weird, but you know, we're energy, and energy circulates, and you get what you give. That's not just karma, that's the basic law of physics. So if you give love, you get love. If you give kindness, you get kindness. If you give hostility, you get hostility. If you give hatred, you get hatred. So when I say be kind, I'm asking you to do yourself a favor.
Yeah. Very good. Thank you so much, Brooke. I've really appreciated this conversation. And thank you to everyone for watching. This has been Julie McVey with Unordinary Made Ordinary. And I hope you'll join us next time for another fascinating interview. And if you liked this, please give it a thumbs up. And if you like this type of content, subscribe to the channel and hit the bell icon so you're alerted to future videos. And I hope you're all having a fantastic day or evening wherever you are on the planet or off the planet. And I will see you next time. Bye.
Thank you. Thank you very much.